Good day. My name is Vince Gaudiani, and I'm a cardiac surgeon in Northern California, and I've practiced here for about 25 years. And we've spent the last 10 assembling our annual outcomes, and at the end we'll show you the website where you can look at these outcomes if you want to. But we wanted to make an additional statement in video because the web is such a fantastic place for patients to get information, but unfortunately the information is unfiltered, and therefore a lot of the information that's out there is either incorrect or misleading, or it's a come on for some marketing gimmick that somebody's come up with. And what we wanted to do was provide you with some ways of how to think about what outcomes mean, because now that you have access to so much information by going to Google and by going on the web and looking around, going to YouTube, you might like to have a way to think about how outcomes work. And the reason I personally wanted to do this is because so many patients come to me and ask the wrong question first, if you will, or what I consider to be the wrong answer, or the wrong question first. And so I want to try to help you to organize how you should think about outcomes in the next 5 or 10 minutes, so that you'll be better prepared to ask intelligent questions when you go to your physician or surgeon with questions about a surgical procedure. So the title of this talk is How to Think About Outcomes. And I'm going to take you through a few thoughts. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is that operations, like most other goods and services, are rendered to create value for customers. Mainly patients in this case, in the case of what you are looking for. That is, create value, make something good happen. And that's a very important first thing to know. Patients or customers seek operations because they are suffering or fear the lethal consequences of their disease. And this can deeply alter the way you think about outcomes or about anything else, because there's nothing we fear more than the fear of her being hurt or dying. And just because it is so important to us, it can lead us to not think so logically or clearly about how to consider outcomes, and that's why we're headed in the direction we're headed in. Now, surgeons, people like me, provide value in several ways, and they're in order of importance on this slide that you're looking at now. And the word reliably is extremely important, and we're going to come back to that in just a moment, but in exponential order of importance, so that the first one is way more important than the second one way more important than the third way more important than the fourth. The first thing we surgeons try to do, is what philosophers call preserve the customer's or the patient's autonomy. The capacity to be an independent, healthy human being is autonomy. And it's a piece of black humor, but you can't have autonomy if you've died. So the first thing an operation has to be is offering as low a mortality as possible. And so the first question I think any consumer would want to ask is, will I be alive at the end of this operation? And then second most important question is, well, you came to have the operation because you wanted to be relieved of suffering. So the second question is, how much will the procedure reduce or resolve my problem? How efficacious is the procedure? And then third, and again, important, but still way less important than being alive and having your problem solved, the third important is, how long will I have downtime? Will I be unable to work or unable to play golf? How long will I be suffering after the operation? How quickly do I recover, etc.? And it's not that those things are unimportant, but compared to being alive and being relieved of the problem you came for in the first place, it's clearly three by a long way. And then finally, least important, but still, of course, consequential, is what are the cosmetic consequences? Where will the scars be? So each of these four things is important, but they have to be considered in order, and it's very critical to understand why the word reliably is in big capital letters there. The word reliably is so important because it implies that the surgeon who's taking care of you, or whoever is doing the procedure, and I'm primarily now talking about operations for life-threatening conditions. I'm not talking about plastic surgery, about which I know nothing, or minor procedures. I'm talking about procedures that, for life-threatening conditions that have life-threatening consequences if they fail, or life-injuring consequences. And so as we speak about these procedures, it's very important to understand what it means for your surgeon to have a standard of care. A surgeon has a standard of care when he has enough experience with that procedure, when enough have been done, and he has done enough, or she has done enough, so that we have good information about how many patients might lose autonomy. That is, given whatever procedure your surgeon is recommending, how many of the patients will die? If you've done 3 and there's been 1 death, you have nowhere near enough information. If you've done 500 and there's 1 death, you begin to know something. So you need a certain volume of information in order to have a standard of care, because you have to have experience. Then the second thing is, how many people have been relieved of their problem? So we frequently read in the newspapers, for instance, that some magical thing has happened to a patient, and there's a column in the, on the front page of the newspaper that says it's like the story of a person who jumps off the end of the Grand Canyon and ends up alive at the bottom. Well, perhaps such a thing could conceivably happen, but try sending 100 people off and see how many or end up alive at the bottom. Do you see? So it's very important to have a standard of care so that you understand how reliably the procedure will keep patients alive, and secondly, how reliably it will solve their problem. And then third, you need to know what the potential side effects of the operation are. Not only how long it takes to recover, but the unintended consequences that can result from the procedure. That's number 3. And then fourth is this idea of how much suffering, incapacity, and finally, way down at the bottom, still important, but nowhere near as important as these others, is, will I be disfigured in some way? Where will the scar be? So thinking not only in that order, but then how much information is available to back that up is critically important to understanding how to think about outcomes. Now, a well-informed surgeon who is looking at new procedures, as we are all the time, as technology changes, will compare his own standard of care, all that he knows about the operations as he has performed or she has performed them in the past, and then look at any new technology that's out there and think, how much do we know about this technology? Do we know enough so that we can reliably know that it causes less death, that it improves outcomes, or that we don't know enough yet, and etc.? So standards of care are important because you have to not only know what questions to ask, but how reliable are the answers. And a person who has developed or is developing a new procedure to care for patients has to have this almost the same idea in reverse. He has to look, or she, at their new procedure and say, well, do I have enough information yet to recommend this to people? And how does it compare to what's currently done? Because we tend to be a society that is very impressed with new technology, but not all new technology is effective, and particularly in medical situations. Although new technology is extremely important, it's also important to remember that the old technology continues to improve. So, for instance, who would have thought in 1950 that by the year 2008 or 9 that we'd be still using an internal combustion engine that was introduced 100 years before that? But the internal combustion engine has continued to improve, and all the other engines that we've tried for driving around in a car, at least, haven't been as good as the continuous improvement that we've seen in the old technology, which is an internal combustion engine with pistons in it.